The streetlights flickered on as dusk settled over Willow Creek, Ohio, casting a dim glow across the cul-de-sac where Marcus Tate's life unraveled in seconds. Red and blue police lights slashed through the twilight, their strobing beams bouncing off the peeling paint of his family's single-story home, the kind of place where kids rode bikes until dark and neighbors knew your name. Marcus, 17, lanky and awkward in his faded black hoodie, froze on the front lawn, his sneakers sinking into the damp grass as 4 officers charged toward him, their shouts sharp and jagged. Hands up. Get down. You're under arrest. His heart slammed against his ribs, a frantic drumbeat, his breath catching as cold steel cuffs snapped around his wrists, the metal biting his skin. What's happening? He stammered, his voice high, cracking like a kid's, but the officers didn't answer, their faces hard, eyes hidden behind mirrored sunglasses. His mother, Denise, burst through the screen door, her bathrobe flapping, her voice a raw scream. Marcus, what are you doing to my son? But a burly officer blocked her, his arm a barrier, his badge catching the light. Marcus is little. Sister Kayla, barely 8, pressed her face to the living room window, her stuffed rabbit clutched tight, her eyes wide with terror, reflecting the chaos outside. The air smelled of rain-soaked asphalt and the neighbor's barbecue, a cruel reminder of normalcy as the world tilted. Officer Greg Pulaski, stocky with a buzz cut and a scowl etched deep, gripped Marcus's arm, dragging him toward a cruiser, its engine idling with a low, predatory growl. You know why we're here, kid, Pulaski muttered, his voice gravelly, but Marcus's mind was a blur no. He didn't know. He hadn't done anything. The word murder slipped from Pulaski's lips, low and deliberate, and Marcus's stomach lurched, his knees buckling as he was shoved against the cruiser's door. Murder? He was just a high school junior, a quiet kid who sketched superheroes in his notebook and played Call of Duty until midnight, not some killer. Neighbors gathered now, phones out, their flashes sparking like fireflies, capturing every moment. Marcus in cuffs, Denise sobbing, Kayla's silhouette frozen at the window. Pulaski's radio crackled, spitting static, and Marcus caught a glimpse of the officer's phone, propped on the dashboard, a shaky video playing, a hooded figure running from an alley, a knife glinting in their hand, the ex-post's caption, screaming, Willow Creek killer caught on cam #Justice for Jenna. The hoodie looked like his, the same black one he wore everywhere, but that wasn't him. It couldn't be. He'd never been in that alley, never held a knife. His throat tightened, his breath shallow. As Pulaski slammed the cruiser door, the sound final, like a coffin lid closing. Inside, the backseat smelled of sweat and cheap pine air freshener, the vinyl sticky under his thighs. Through the window, he saw his mom collapse to her knees, her hands covering her face, while neighbors whispered, their phones still recording, the video already spreading, likes and retweets climbing by the second. The cruiser pulled away, tires crunching gravel, the streetlights blurring into streaks of yellow. Marcus's hands shook in the cuffs, his mind racing. How could a blurry clip, a few seconds of footage from a place he'd never been, be enough to rip him from his life? The question clawed at him, sharp and relentless, as the car sped toward the station, the world outside fading, leaving only the weight of a lie going viral and the sinking dread that no one would believe him. The interrogation room at Willow Creek's police station was a claustrophobic cube, its cinder block walls stained with years of despair, the air thick with the faint tang of sweat and burnt coffee from a pot left on too long. Marcus Tate sat, hunched at a scarred metal table, his wrists raw from the cuffs now removed, his faded hoodie damp with nervous sweat. The fluorescent light above buzzed incessantly, a high-pitched whine that drilled into his skull, its flicker casting shadows that danced across the scuffed linoleum floor. Across from him, Detective Karen Walsh leaned forward, her sharp blue eyes locked on his. Her blonde ponytail pulled so tight, it seemed to stretch her face into a permanent frown. Officer Greg Pulaski, the buzz-cut cop who dragged him from his front lawn, slouched in a corner chair, his thick arms crossed, chewing gum with slow, deliberate smacks that echoed in the silence. The clock on the wall read 9:17 p.m., its red second hand ticking like a heartbeat, each click amplifying the weight of the moment. Marcus's stomach growled, his last meal a half-eaten burger from lunch, but hunger was a distant ache compared to the fear knotting his chest. Walsh slid a tablet across the table, its screen frozen on the viral X video, now at 250,000 views, the comments a venomous swarm. Guilty. Rot in jail. Each one a stab at Marcus's shrinking sense of self. Let's watch it. Again, Marcus, Walsh said, her voice smooth but edged, like a knife hidden in velvet, as she tapped play. The grainy footage rolled. A hooded figure sprinting from the alley where Jenna Harper, a 24-year-old diner cashier, had been found stabbed, her blood pooling on the pavement. The figure's face was a blur, but the hoodie was black, like Marcus's, and the knife's glint caught the light, undeniable. That's you, isn't it? Walsh pressed, her pen tapping the table in rhythm with the clock. Marcus shook his head, his throat dry, his voice barely a whisper. I was home. I swear, I was with my mom, my sister. Pulaski snorted, leaning forward, his chair creaking under his bulk. Your mom's word doesn't mean much, kid. And that hoodie? We found it in your closet. Matches the video. Marcus's heart lurched. It was just a hoodie, the same one half the kids at school wore, bought cheap at Walmart. Walsh's questions came faster now. A barrage. Where were you at 7 p.m.? Why's your phone's location off? Who'd you talk to that night? Each one felt like a trap, her tone shifting from calm to accusing, her eyes never leaving his face, searching for a crack. Marcus stammered, his words tripping over each other, his mind foggy from the adrenaline crash and the room's stifling heat. The video looped again, the figure's movements jerky, the knife's flash searing into his brain. I don't know who that is, he said, his voice cracking, but Walsh leaned closer, her breath minty, her words slow and deliberate. You're only making this harder, Marcus. Tell us what happened. We can help you if you're honest. The promise felt hollow, a lure, but the room's walls seemed to close in, the buzz of the light louder, the clock's ticks heavier. Pulaski stood, pacing behind him, his boots thudding, his shadow looming. We got witnesses, kid. People saw you near the diner, he said, though Marcus caught the lie, no witnesses had been mentioned before. His hands shook, his fingers itching for his sketchbook, something to ground him, but there was only the cold table, the tablet's glare, and Walsh's unrelenting stare. She slid a photo of Jenna across the table, smiling, freckled, alive, and Marcus's chest tightened, her face familiar from the diner where he'd grabbed fries, but not someone he knew, not someone he'd hurt. You're in deep, Marcus, Walsh said softly, her tone almost kind, but her eyes were cold, calculating. Just tell us the truth, and maybe you sleep in your own bed tonight. The lie hung heavy, the room shrinking with each tick of the clock, and Marcus felt the weight of their certainty, the video's accusation, the X comments branding him a killer, all pressing down, suffocating as he sat there, a scared kid in a world that had already judged him. The interrogation room's air had turned sour, thick with the stench of old coffee and the metallic tang of Marcus Tate's sweat, his faded hoodie clinging to his skin as he slumped in the wobbly metal chair. The fluorescent light buzzed overhead, its flicker casting jagged shadows across the gray cinder-block walls, each pulse syncing with the pounding in Marcus's temples. The clock on the wall ticked past 1 a.m., its relentless rhythm a mocking reminder of the hours stolen from him. Since the police cruiser's lights had torn apart his quiet Willow Creek evening, Detective Corinne Walsh sat across the scratched table, her blonde ponytail still immaculate, her blue eyes sharp as ever, but her voice had softened, a calculated shift, like a predator circling a wounded animal. Officer Greg Pulaski paced behind. Marcus, his boots thudding on the linoleum, each step a jolt to Marcus's fraying nerves, his gum-chewing smacks loud in the oppressive silence. Walsh slid a photo of Jenna Harper closer, her freckled smile frozen in time, her blonde hair tied back, a diner apron slung over her jeans, a mother, a daughter, a life snuffed out. She was 24, Marcus, Walsh said, her tone low, almost tender, but laced with accusation. Her little girl's 2 now, no mom to tuck her in. You did that? Marcus's chest tightened, his breath shallow, the guilt she was planting foreign but heavy, like a stone in his stomach. He hadn't known Jenna, not really just a familiar face behind the diner counter, her laugh a faint memory from late night. Fry runs with his friends. I didn't do it, he whispered, his voice hoarse, barely audible, but Walsh leaned closer, her pen tapping the table, a metronome of pressure. You're tired, Marcus. We're tired. Just tell us what happened. It was an accident, right? You didn't mean to hurt her. The words were a trap, smooth and inviting, but Marcus's head spun, his thoughts tangled in exhaustion, hunger, and the relentless hum of the light. Pulaski stopped pacing, looming over Marcus's shoulder, his breath hot and sour with coffee and nicotine. We got your prints, kid, he growled, his voice a low rumble. On a soda can in the alley. You were there. Stop wasting our time. Marcus's heart lurched Prince. He'd tossed a can in the diner's trash days ago. Maybe a week, but not in the alley. Not that night. Or had he? The days blurred, his memory buckling under their relentless assault. Walsh's eyes never left him, her gaze a scalpel, dissecting his every twitch, every stammer. Your mom's out there, Marcus, she said, her voice softening further, a cruel mimicry of kindness. She's worried sick. You want her to sleep tonight, don't you? Sign a statement, say it was a mistake, and this ends. The mention of his mom hit like a fist, her tear-streaked face flashing in his mind, Kayla's terrified eyes at the window, the neighbors' phones recording his shame. Pulaski leaned in closer, his shadow swallowing the light, his voice a hiss. We can. Charge your mom, too, you know, obstructing justice. Lying for you? You want that for her? For your little sister? Marcus's breath caught, his hands trembling as they gripped the table's edge, the metal cold and unyielding. He hadn't eaten since noon, hadn't slept, his body aching, his mind a fog of fear and doubt. Walsh slid a paper across the table, a single sheet with typed lines he couldn't focus on, a pen resting beside it, glinting under the harsh light. I was home, he said again, weaker now, his voice cracking, but Pulaski slammed a fist on the table, the sound echoing like a gunshot, making Marcus flinch. Enough lies, Pulaski barked. The video's got you, the prince. Witnesses saw you near the diner. You're done, kid. Witnesses? Marcus's mind reeled. No one had mentioned witnesses before, but the word landed like a brick, heavy and final. Walsh's tone shifted again, coaxing now, her words wrapping around him like a net. You're young, Marcus. You've got a future. Tell us it was a fight gone wrong, self-defense, and the judge will go easy. You don't want to rot in prison, do you? The word prison was a blade slicing through his defenses, conjuring images of cells, chains, years stolen from him. His fingers twitched, itching for his sketchbook, for the pencil he'd used to draw his way out of fear. But there was only the table, the photo, the pen. The room felt smaller, The walls pulsing, the lights buzz louder, the clocks ticks. Heavier, each one pushing him closer to breaking. He thought of his mom's late shifts, Kayla's drawings, the ex-posts calling him a monster. Their likes climbing 300,000 now. The video looping in his mind. That hoodie, that knife, none of. It his, but their certainty was a tide, pulling him under. Walsh's voice was a whisper now, intimate, relentless. Sign it, Marcus. Make it stop. His hand moved shaky toward the pen, his heart screaming no, but his body too tired, too scared to resist the weight of their lies and his fear, pressing him down, 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 until the room was nothing but the pen and the paper and a lie they wanted him to make real. The interrogation room was a suffocating cage, its gray walls slick with condensation, the air heavy with the stale reek of sweat, burnt coffee, and the faint chemical sting of cleaning fluid that failed to mask the despair baked into the linoleum. Marcus Tate sat slumped in the metal chair, his body aching, his faded hoodie damp and clinging to his skin, the welts on his wrists from the cuffs throbbing with each heartbeat. The fluorescent bulb overhead buzzed like a dying insect, its flicker, casting erratic shadows that danced across the scarred table, amplifying the pounding in Marcus's skull. The clock on the wall ticked past 3 a.m., each second a hammer strike, marking the hours since his world had collapsed under the red and blue lights of the police cruiser outside his Willow Creek home. Detective Corinne Walsh leaned forward, her blonde ponytail still impossibly neat, her blue eyes glinting with a predatory calm, her voice now a low, soothing hum, like a lullaby laced with venom. Officer Greg Pulaski stood behind Marcus, his boots scuffing the floor, his presence a looming threat, his gum-chewing smacks punctuating the silence like gunfire. Walsh slid the photo of Jenna Harper closer, her freckled smile a haunting accusation, her diner apron a reminder of a life Marcus hadn't taken but was being forced to carry. Her daughter's alone now, Marcus, Walsh said, her tone soft, almost mournful, but her eyes never wavered, pinning him like a bug to a board. You can make this right. Just tell us how it happened. Marcus's throat was sandpaper. His lips cracked, his stomach a hollow knot. He hadn't eaten since noon, hadn't drunk water, hadn't slept, his body screaming for relief while his mind drowned in fog. I didn't do it, he croaked, his voice barely audible, each word a struggle against the weight of their stares. Pulaski leaned over his shoulder, his breath hot and sour, reeking of nicotine and coffee. We've got your DNA, kid, he growled, his voice a low rumble that vibrated in Marcus's chest. Hair in the alley, your prints on the can. Your? Cooked, Marcus's heart stuttered. DNA? A can? He'd tossed a soda can in the diner's trash days ago. Maybe a week, but not in the alley, not that night. Or had he? His memory was a jigsaw puzzle with missing pieces, scattered by exhaustion. And fear. Walsh's pen tapped the table, a relentless rhythm, her words wrapping around him like a noose. You're not a bad kid, Marcus. You just made a mistake. Maybe Jenna said something, got you mad, and you snapped. It happens. Tell us, and we can help you. The promise was a lie, but it dangled like a lifeline, tempting in the haze of his fatigue. Pulaski's boots thudded as he paced, his shadow swallowing the light, his voice sharper now. Your mom's out there, crying, lying to protect you. We can bring her in, charge her with obstruction. You want Kayla in foster care? The mention of his sister's name was a knife, twisting deep, her terrified face at the window flashing in his mind, her stuffed rabbit clutched tight. Marcus's hands shook, his fingers twitching for his sketchbook, for the pencil that always steadied him. But there was only the cold table, the photo, and the paper Walsh had slid toward him. A typed statement blurred through his burning eyes. I was home, he whispered, but the words felt hollow, like a plea no one would hear. Pulaski slammed the table, the sound a thunderclap, making Marcus flinch, his chair scraping back. "Stop jerking us around," Pulaski barked. "The videos got you running from the scene. Witnesses saw you. Sign the damn paper, or we drag your whole family down with you." Witnesses? The word was a fresh wound no one had mentioned. Witnesses before, but it landed like truth, heavy and unyielding. Walsh's voice softened again, a serpent's hiss. "You're young, Marcus. You've got a life ahead. Sign this, say it was an accident, self-defense, and the judge'll go easy. You don't want to spend your life in a cell, do you?" Prison. The word was a void, swallowing his future, conjuring images of bars, chains, years lost. The room spun, the walls closing in, the lights buzz a scream in his ears. The tablet on the table looped the viral video again. 350,000 views now. The X comments a tidal wave of hate. "Monster. Lock him up." Each one a brick in the wall they were building around him. Marcus's hand trembled, hovering. Over the pen, his heart screaming he was innocent. But his body was breaking, his mind a maze of doubt. Had he been near the diner? Could he have forgotten? The questions gnawed, their lies blending with his fear, and Walsh's voice was relentless, a siren's call. "Sign it, Marcus, and this. For your mom, for Kayla." His fingers closed around. The pen, the metal cold, the paper a white abyss. He didn't want to, but the room was a vice, squeezing until he couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The pen scratched ink across the page, his hand moving as if possessed, signing a lie that felt like truth in his shattered state. Walsh's lips curled, a faint smile, as she took the paper, but Marcus felt no relief, only a hollow ache, like he'd carved out his own heart. Pulaski clapped his shoulder, hard enough to sting, muttering, "Smart move, kid," but the room didn't stop spinning. The clock didn't stop ticking, and Marcus knew, deep in his bones, that the confession, a jumble of vague times, a knife he'd never held, wasn't freedom, but a chain, locking him to a truth that wasn't his. The Willow Creek courthouse was a cavern of polished oak and muted whispers, its high ceilings swallowing the shuffle of shoes and the low hum of anticipation that hung like fog over the packed gallery. Marcus Tate sat at the defense table, his, two large suit jackets sagging on his narrow shoulders, the cheap tie around his neck feeling like a noose, its knot pressing against his throat with every shallow breath. At 18, he was a shadow of the kid who'd sketched superheroes in his bedroom. Just months ago, his eyes hollow, his hands clasped tightly to hide their trembling, the skin still raw from the cuffs that had brought him here. The air smelled of wax polish and stale coffee, the kind left in styrofoam cups by overworked clerks, and outside, rain streaked the tall windows, casting gray light across the room, mirroring the dread pooling in Marcus's gut. The prosecutor, Alan Carver, a wiry man with slicked back hair and a smile sharp as a blade, paced before the jury, his voice booming with a preacher's fervor, holding up a blown-up still from the viral X video, now at 500,000 views, that showed a hooded figure sprinting from the alley where Jenna Harper had been stabbed. "This is Marcus Tate," Carver declared, his words ringing through the courtroom. "A young man who, in a fit of rage, stole a mother's life and left her 2-year-old daughter to grow up alone." The jury, 12 strangers with faces, ranging from bored to grim-shifted in their seats, some nodding, others scribbling notes, their eyes flicking to Marcus, branding him with their judgment. His public defender, Sarah Nguyen, sat beside him, her glasses slipping down her nose, her desk a chaos of dog-eared files and crumpled post-its, her inexperience a palpable weight. She'd met Marcus only twice before the trial, her caseload, a crushing avalanche, and he could feel her panic in the way her pen shook as she scribbled. Carver called his first witness, a diner coworker named Tammy, who swore under oath she'd seen Marcus arguing with Jenna days before the murder. Her voice quivering but certain, though Marcus's memory held no such fight, only vague flashes of small talk over fries. He seemed angry, Tammy said, her eyes avoiding his, and Marcus's stomach twisted, wondering if he'd forgotten something, if the stress of school and his mom's late shifts had blurred his recall. Carver moved on, presenting a forensic. Tech, a woman with pinched lips and nervous hands, who testified that fibers from Marcus's hoodie matched those found in the alley. Her report vague, the chain of custody, a mess of smudged signatures. Sarah stood to object, her voice thin, cracking under the courtroom scrutiny, but the judge, a stern man with deep frown lines and a gavel that fell like a guillotine, overruled her, his tone sharp, dismissive. The video played on a courtroom. Screen, its grainy loop relentless, the hooded figure's movements jerky, the knife's glint a damning spotlight, and Marcus felt the jury's gazes harden, their minds closing like doors. Whispers rippled through the gallery, reporters tapping on laptops, neighbors murmuring, Jenna's family sobbing quietly in the front row. Their grief a weight Marcus couldn't shake, even if he hadn't caused it. On a monitor near the judge, X-Post scrolled live, hashtag Justice for Jenna, trending with thousands of comments calling Marcus a monster, a killer, each one a needle in his skin. Sarah tried to cross-examine, her questions fumbling, pointing out the video's blurry quality, the lack of a clear face, but Carver twisted her words, his voice smooth, confident, painting Marcus as a liar who'd confessed, his signature on. That coerced statement now a chain around his neck. Why would an innocent boy sign a confession? Carver asked the jury, his tone dripping with mock pity, and Marcus wanted to scream that he'd been broken, starved, threatened, but his voice was trapped, his throat tight. Denise, his mom, sat in the gallery, her hospital scrubs wrinkled, her eyes red and swollen, clutching Kayla's hand, her 8-year-old daughter's face pale, her stuffed rabbit forgotten on the bench. Their presence was a lifeline, the only thing keeping Marcus from crumbling as Carver built his narrative. A troubled teen, a senseless crime, a community betrayed. Sarah tried to counter, calling a neighbor who'd seen Marcus at home that night, but her testimony was shaky, her memory vague under Carver's brutal cross-examination, and the jury's faces remained stone cold. The rain outside grew heavier, drumming the windows, a relentless rhythm that matched Marcus's racing pulse. As the day dragged on, hours bleeding into each other, Carver's story solidified, a tower of half-truths and manipulated evidence, while Sarah's defense faltered, her objections drowned by the prosecutor's theatrics. Marcus's fingers twitched, longing for his sketchbook, for the lines that used to make sense of the world, but there was only the table's cold edge, the jury's stares, and the sinking realization that the system had already convicted him. The truth buried under the weight of a viral lie and a confession he'd been forced to sign. The judge banged his gavel, adjourning for the day, and Marcus was let out, his chains clinking, his mom's muffled sob echoing in his ears. The question of how he'd fight this crushing him as the courtroom faded behind him. The cell block at Stark County Correctional was a concrete labyrinth, its air thick with the sharp bite of bleach and the sour undercurrent of unwashed bodies, the kind of smell that clung to your skin and never let go. Marcus Tate, now inmate, hash 47,219, shuffled through the gray corridors in an orange jumpsuit, the fabric stiff and scratchy, the number stitched over his chest like a scar. At 18, his world had collapsed into an 8x10 cell, its walls etched with the scratches of past inmates, its thin mattress sagging under a threadbare blanket that did little against the chill seeping from the concrete. The trial's verdict, guilty. 25 years to life still rang in his ears, A death knell for the kid who'd once dreamed of art school, his sketchbook now a distant memory replaced by the clang of metal doors and the constant hum of fluorescent lights that never dimmed. Days bled into weeks, each one a grind of tasteless oatmeal shoveled from plastic trays, shouted orders from guards with batons that tapped like threats, and the ever-present danger of the yard, where eyes followed him, sizing up his slight frame, his quiet demeanor an invitation for trouble. He kept his head down, his shoulders hunched, learning fast to avoid the wrong gaze, the wrong step. Inmates like Big T, a hulking man with tattoos snaking up his neck, watched him from the mess hall, their smirks promising trouble, while others, hardened by years inside, ignored him, their silence a different kind of warning. At night, the cell block was a symphony of despair coughs, curses, the occasional sob from a new guy breaking under the weight, and Marcus lay awake, tracing the ceiling's cracks, imagining his mom's tired smile, Kayla's giggle, the life he'd lost. Letters from home came irregularly, Denise's handwriting shaky on thin paper, her words full of love but strained by exhaustion from hospital shifts, each one ending with a promise to keep fighting. Kayla sent drawings, crayon sketches of their family under a too bright sun, the colors smudged from her small hands, and Marcus pinned them to his wall with stolen tape, their edges curling in the damp air. In the mess hall, he met Reggie, a lifer with gray braids and a scar across his cheek, who noticed Marcus sketching on a napkin with a contraband pencil stub. "You got a gift, kid?" Reggie said, his voice low, gravelly, sliding the napkin back with a nod. "Hold on to it. Keeps you human." Reggie became a shield, his presence warding off the worst of the yard's predators. His stories of his own case, a robbery pinned on him by a crooked cop offering a grim mirror to Marcus's own fate. Reggie taught him the unwritten rules. Don't snitch, don't owe. Watch the guards as much as the inmates. Officer Malone, a wiry guard with a mean streak, seemed to have it out for Marcus, his baton tapping the bars at night, his smirk a warning that trouble could come any time. In the yard, Marcus overheard a new inmate, a twitchy guy named Carlos, muttering about knowing something about Jenna's case, something about a guy in a jacket, not a hoodie, seen near the diner. But when Marcus pressed him, Carlos clammed up, his eyes darting to Malone in the watchtower. The prison library, a cramped room with sagging shelves and books missing pages, became Marcus's refuge, where he'd sketch on scraps of paper, each line a rebellion against the gray monotony. He drew Willow Creek streets, his mom's face, Kayla's rabbit, the alley he'd never been to but couldn't escape. Reggie slipped him more pencil stubs, smuggled from who knows where, and their late-night talks in the cell block, whispered through the bars, became a lifeline. Reggie's gruff wisdom, a reminder that innocence could survive, even here. The days ground on, each one chipping at Marcus's hope, his sketches growing darker, the lines sharper, but Denise's letters, Kyla's drawings, and Reggie's quiet nods kept a spark alive, fragile but stubborn, a flicker that refused to die in the face of Malone's glares, the yard's threats, and the crushing weight of a system that had stolen his future over a blurry video and a lie he'd been forced to sign. As Marcus clutched Kayla's latest drawing, a stick-figure family holding hands, he whispered to himself that he'd make it out, that someone, somewhere, would see the truth, even as the cell block's echoes tried to drown that hope in despair. The prison library at Stark County Correctional was a cramped sanctuary, its air heavy with the musty scent of old books and the faint dampness of concrete walls that never quite dried. Marcus Tate sat at a wobbly table, his orange jumpsuit faded, from months of wear, its coarse fabric itching against his skin as he hunched over a scrap of paper, sketching the Willow Creek diner with a smuggled pencil stub, each line a tether to a life that felt like a dream. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, their cold glare casting shadows across the sagging shelves, where books with torn covers and missing pages leaned like tired soldiers. Outside, a July heatwave pressed against the barred windows, the air sticky, the faint hum of cicadas seeping through the glass, a cruel reminder of summer beyond the bars. Marcus, now 18, had been inmate number 47,219 for nearly a year, the guilty verdict 25 years to life await that pressed against his chest, heavier than the cell block's steel doors. His days were a blur of routine. Wake up at 6 a.m., slop. For breakfast, yard time where he dodged glares from men like Big T, whose tattoos and bulk promised trouble, and nights haunted by the cell block sounds, coughs, curses, the occasional cry of a new guy breaking. His mom, Denise, sent letters when she could, her handwriting shaky from exhaustion, her words full of love but edged with despair, each one detailing her late shifts at the hospital and Kyla's latest school project. Kayla's drawings came. 2 crayon sketches of their family under impossibly bright suns, the colors fading from cheap wax, pinned to Marcus's cell wall with stolen tape, their edges curling in the damp. It was in the library, on a humid afternoon thick with the smell of mildew, that Marcus met Lila Carter, a wiry woman in her 30s with a tight braid and eyes that missed nothing, a volunteer from the Ohio Innocence Project who ran a legal literacy program. Lila noticed his sketches, Willow Creek streets, his mom's tired smile, Kayla's stuffed rabbit, and paused, her voice warm but direct. "You've got talent, Marcus," she said, sliding into the chair across from him, her notebook already open. "Tell me your story." For the first time since the cuffs snapped on, Marcus felt seen not as a number, not as the Willow Creek killer the ex-posts branded him, but as a person, a kid caught in a nightmare. He poured out the details, the arrest, the interrogations. Endless hours, Walsh's soft lies, Pulaski's threats, the confession he'd signed in a fog of fear. Lila listened, her pen flying, her brow furrowing as he described the viral video. Now at 700,000 views, its blurry hoodie and glinting knife, damning him in the court of public opinion. "That video's weak," she said, her voice firm. "And that confession? Classic coercion. We can fight this." Her words were a spark, igniting a hope Marcus had buried under months of concrete and steel. Lila started meeting him weekly, slipping him law books with titles like Criminal Procedure and Evidence Law, their pages dense with jargon he struggled to decode, but each underlined passage Brady violations, exculpatory evidence, felt like a brick in a wall of truth. Reggie, the lifer with gray braids who'd become his protector, helped, his own case a masterclass in systemic failure, his gravelly voice breaking down terms like discovery and misconduct during late-night cell block whispers. Outside, Denise had taken to X, her posts tagged #free Marcus Tate, sharing Marcus's sketches and trial clips, her captions raw, pleading, "My son is innocent. Help us." Her posts, once ignored, were gaining traction, hundreds of likes turning into thousands, strangers sharing stories of their own brushes with injustice, their comments a chorus of outrage and support. A local journalist, Sam Rivera, picked up the story, his X profile amplifying Denise's pleas, his articles digging into Willow Creek's police department, hinting at a pattern of rushed arrests and shaky evidence. Marcus reads Sam's clippings, smuggled in by Lila, his heart racing at mentions of forensic inconsistencies and questionable interrogations. In the yard, Reggie warned him to keep quiet. Talk of new evidence could paint a target on his back, especially with Officer Malone's baton tapping louder at night, his glare sharper since Sam's articles hit. But hope was a stubborn thing, growing in Marcus's chest like a weed through concrete. Lila's visits became his lifeline, her notebook filling with plans for an appeal, her team digging into the case file, chasing leads on a missing security tape rumored to exist from a nearby store. Back in his cell, Marcus pored over her books, his pencil stubs scratching notes, his sketches now mixed with legal terms, a fusion of art and survival. Denise's latest letter spoke of a rally, a small crowd outside the courthouse with #free Marcus Tate. Signs and Kayla's newest drawing, a family holding hands, a son bigger than ever made his throat tighten. The library's stale air felt alive now, each book a weapon, each meeting with Lila a step toward freedom. Reggie's gruff nod, Denise's posts, Sam's articles, and the growing buzz on X were threads weaving together, fragile but strong, pulling Marcus toward a future he could almost see, even as Malone's baton tapped and the cell block's walls whispered that hope was a dangerous thing to hold. The library at Stark County Correctional was a dim, musty refuge, its sagging shelves groaning under the weight of dog-eared books, the air thick with the scent of mildew and old paper, undercut by the faint metallic tang of the prison's ever-present dampness. Marcus Tate sat at a scarred wooden table, his orange jumpsuit faded to a sickly peach, and number 47,219 stitched over his chest like a brand that burned deeper with each passing day. His pencil stub, smuggled from who knows where, scratched. Across a scrap of paper, sketching the alley from the viral X video, not as it was in the grainy footage that had damned him, but as he imagined it, empty, quiet, a place he'd never been. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, their flicker casting jagged shadows across the room, sinking with the dull throb in Marcus's temples, a constant reminder of the year he'd lost to these walls. Outside, October rain hammered the bard. Windows, a relentless drumbeat that matched the urgency pulsing in his veins. It was here, on a morning heavy with the promise of a storm, that Lila Carter, the Ohio Innocence Project volunteer, slipped into the library, her braid tighter than usual, her sharp eyes glinting with something new excitement, barely contained, like a spark ready to ignite. She carried a manila folder, thick with papers tucked under her arm, her steps quick, purposeful, as she slid into the chair across from Marcus. "We've got something," she whispered, her voice low but electric, glancing at the guard by the door, a bored man flipping through a magazine. Marcus's heart skipped, his pencil freezing mid-line, the diner's outline half-formed on the page. Lila opened the folder, spreading out documents like a dealer revealing a winning hand. Photocopies of police reports, forensic logs, and a grainy still from a security camera, one nobody had mentioned at his trial. "This was buried," she said, her finger jabbing the still, showing a different angle of the alley where Jenna Harper had died, time-stamped just minutes after the viral video that had branded Marcus a killer. The figure in the frame was taller, broader, the hoodie a darker shade, almost navy, not black, and the knife wasn't in their hand, but on the ground, glinting in the streetlight, as if dropped in haste. Marcus's breath caught, his fingers, tracing the image, the truth so close he could feel it, sharp and alive, cutting through the fog of his imprisonment. Lila's voice was steady, urgent, as she explained. A rookie cop had logged the footage, but misfiled it under an unrelated case number, a clerical error or deliberate cover-up that kept it from the defense, a clear Brady violation that could unravel everything. Marcus's pulse raced, his eyes darting across the documents, each one a crack in the case that had stolen his life. The folder held more. A disciplinary report on the forensic tech from his trial. A woman named Carla Evans, who testified about hoodie fibers matching Marcus's, now revealed to have been reprimanded for falsifying data in another case, her credibility shredded like tissue paper. Lila had found it through a public records request, pushed by Sam Rivera, the journalist whose ex-posts had amplified Denise's #free Marcus Tate campaign, forcing the county to release unredacted files. Sam's latest article, clipped and smuggled. In by Lila detailed a pattern of sloppy police work in Willow Creek, hinting at pressure to close cases fast, even if it meant pinning them on the wrong kid. Marcus's mind spun, the pieces clicking misfiled footage, discredited forensics, a confession coerced under threats and lies. The diner's trash logs, buried in the same records, showed his soda can had been collected days before Jenna's. Murder, not the night of blowing apart the prosecution's timeline. On X, Sam's posts were exploding. Side-by-side stills of the two videos, the viral clip versus the new footage, racking up thousands of retweets. Hashtag Free Marcus Tate trending, with comments demanding justice, accountability, an end to Willow Creek's dirty shortcuts. Marcus leaned back, his chair creaking, the library's stale air suddenly electric, each document a lifeline pulling him toward freedom. Leela's notebook was open, her pen scratching furiously, detailing plans for an appeal, her team already, drafting motions to vacate his conviction. She'd tracked down a lead on a witness, a homeless man named Earl who'd been near the alley that night, ignored by police because of his tattered clothes and unsteady gait, but whose story hinted at another figure, someone who didn't match Marcus's build. In the cell block, whispers were spreading. Reggie, the lifer who'd become Marcus's mentor, had overheard Carlos, the twitchy inmate, muttering again about a guy in a jacket, not a hoodie, seen near the diner, though fear kept him quiet, especially with Officer Malone's baton tapping louder at night, his glare sharper since Sam's articles started naming names. Reggie warned Marcus to stay low. Cops didn't like their mistakes exposed, and the prison had ears, but Marcus couldn't stop the hope surging in his chest, fierce and fragile, like a flame in a storm. He clutched his sketch, the alley now a map, not a nightmare, its lines tracing a path to truth. Denise's latest letter, tucked in his pocket, spoke of a growing movement rallies outside the courthouse, strangers donating to a legal fund, Kayla's schoolmates wearing hashtag Free Marcus Tate bracelets. Sam's articles were gaining traction, picked up by bigger outlets, each one chipping at the narrative that had convicted him. Lila's voice cut through his thoughts, her words precise. "We're going for a new trial, Marcus. This evidence changes everything." The rain outside slowed, the library's quiet hum alive with possibility, and Marcus's fingers tightened. Around his pencil, sketching the alley again, its shadow softer now, the knife on the ground, a symbol of a lie unraveling. He thought of his mom's tired eyes, Kyla's crayon sons, the X-posts carrying his story to thousands, maybe millions. The cell block's threats, Malone's glares, the yard's dangers, they were still there, but they felt smaller now, dwarfed by the weight of the truth in Lila's folder. The momentum building beyond the bars, and the stubborn spark in Marcus's heart that refused to let the system's lies win. The Willow Creek courthouse loomed like a fortress of judgment, its oak-paneled walls polished to a gleam that reflected the tension in the air, the scent of wax and old coffee mingling with the damp musk of rain-soaked coats from the crowd packed into the gallery. Marcus Tate sat at the defense table, his borrowed suit still too big, its sleeves slipping over his knuckles, the tie around his neck a constant pressure, like the weight of the past year in Stark County Correctional, pressing down on him. 18, he was a ghost of the kid who'd once sketched superheroes in his Willow Creek bedroom, his eyes shadowed from sleepless nights, his hands clasped to hide their trembling, the welts from his arrest long faded, but the scars on his soul, raw. The appeals hearing was a battleground, the air charged with anticipation, every seat filled reporters scribbling furiously, activists clutching hashtag Free Marcus Tate signs, his mom, Denise, and little sister, Kayla. In the front row, their faces, taut with hope, Denise's hospital scrubs wrinkled, Kayla's small hand gripping her mom's, her stuffed rabbit forgotten on the bench. Outside, a storm raged, rain pounding the tall windows, the glass rattling with each gust. a chaotic rhythm that mirrored the pulse hammering in Marcus's chest. Leila Carter, his lawyer from the Ohio Innocence Project, stood beside him. Her suit crisp, her braid tight, her files a fortress of evidence stacked neatly on the table, a far cry from the chaotic mess of his trial. She'd filed a motion to vacate his conviction, citing the buried security footage, the discredited forensic tech, and the coerced confession, her argument a meticulously woven tapestry of truth that shredded the prosecution's case. The new Judge Eleanor Hayes, a woman with silver hair and a gaze sharp as a blade, leaned forward, her pen poised, her face unreadable as Leila began, her voice steady, cutting through the room's hum like a beacon. The state withheld exculpatory evidence, Leila declared, holding up the security camera still from the alley. Its timestamp clear 11:07 p.m., minutes after the viral video that had branded Marcus a killer. A figure in the frame was taller, broader, the hoodie a darker shade, navy, not black, the knife on the ground, not in their hand, a detail that shifted the narrative entirely. "This is a Brady violation, Your Honor," Leila said, her words precise. "A deliberate failure to disclose evidence that would have cleared my client." The gallery buzzed, reporters typing, ex-posts streaming live updates, hashtag Free Marcus Tate trending with thousands of comments demanding justice, accountability, an end to Willow Creek's rush to convict. Prosecutor Alan Carver, his slicked back, hair glinting under the courtroom lights, his suit sharper than ever, fought back, his voice booming with false confidence, claiming the new footage was inconclusive, the confession still valid, Marcus's signature a mark of guilt. But his arguments faltered, his tone less certain, as Leila dismantled his case, her preparation airtight, her cross-examination relentless. She called Carla Evans, the forensic tech from the trial, to the stand, her pinched lips trembling as she admitted to errors in her report, her disciplinary record for falsifying data in another case laid bare for the jury to see. Carver tried to redirect, his questions sharp, but Evans's nervous fidgeting, her hands twisting in her lap, told a story of incompetence that no amount of bluster could hide. The gallery murmured, the air electric, as Leila introduced Sam Rivera, the journalist whose ex-posts had fueled the movement, his testimony a damning expose of Willow Creek's police department. Sam detailed his investigation, his voice calm but firm, revealing a pattern of rushed arrests, 3 other cases where evidence was mishandled, witnesses ignored, all to clear dockets and appease a community baying for blood. He pointed to the X campaign, Denise's posts, the viral swell of hashtag Free Marcus Tate, showing how public pressure had forced the county to release the hidden footage. The monitor near the judge flickered with live X feeds, comments scrolling. This is corruption. Free Marcus now. Each one a brick in the wall of truth Leila was building. Then came Earl, the homeless witness, shuffling to the stand in a worn coat, his face weathered, but his story clear. He'd seen a tall man in a dark jacket, not a hoodie, running from the alley that night, his description matching the new footage. Not Marcus. Carver attacked, calling Earl unreliable, a drunk, his voice dripping with contempt. But Leila produced a sobriety record, a clinic visit time-stamped days before the murder, her counter a surgical strike that left Carver scrambling. Marcus's heart pounded, his eyes darting to his mom, her tears silent but fierce, Kayla clutching her hand, their presence a lifeline in the storm of the courtroom. Leila called a digital forensics expert, a wiry man named Dr. Patel, who testified that the viral video's metadata showed signs of tampering, frames edited to blur the figure's height, the hoodie's shade manipulated to match Marcus's. The revelation landed like a thunderclap, the gallery gasping, reporters tweeting. Furiously, the X feed erupting with thousands more joining the call for justice. Leila's closing was a masterpiece, her voice rising, steady but fierce. Marcus Tate was a scapegoat, a kid targeted by a system that valued closure over truth, a system that buried evidence, coerced a confession, and let a killer walk free. Carver's rebuttal was weak, his arguments unraveling, his confidence crumbling under the weight of Lila's evidence. The new footage, Earl's testimony, the forensic tech's disgrace. The judge's pen scratched notes, her eyes flicking between Lila and Carver, her silence a void that held the room in suspense. Marcus felt the gallery's energy, the weight of every ex-post, every rally, every crayon drawing from Kayla, all converging on this moment, where the truth was clawing its way out. The storm outside slowed, the rain a soft patter now, but the tension inside was a live wire, sparking with the possibility of freedom. Lila leaned toward Marcus, her whisper fierce. "We've got them, Marcus." "Hold on." He nodded, his throat tight, his hands gripping the table's edge, the wood cool under his fingers, his mind racing with images of his cell, Reggie's gruff wisdom, his mom's late-night posts, the thousands of strangers on X who'd seen his sketches, his story, and believed him. The judge recessed to deliberate, her gavel a sharp crack, and the gallery held its breath, the rain outside a faint murmur, the courtroom a crucible where Marcus's fate hung, fragile but fierce, on the edge of a truth that might finally break through the lies that had caged him. The Willow Creek courthouse was a cauldron of silence as Judge Eleanor Hayes returned to the bench, her silver hair catching the soft glow of the overhead lights, her face a mask of calm that belied the weight of her words. Marcus Tate sat at the defense table, his borrowed suit hanging loose on his frame, the tie around his neck, a fading pressure compared to the hope and dread warring in his chest. At 18, he was no longer the kid who'd sketched superheroes in his Willow Creek bedroom, but a young man hardened by a year in Stark County Correctional, his eyes shadowed but alive with a flicker of possibility. A gallery was packed reporters, with laptops glowing, activists clutching soggy #Free Marcus Tate signs, his mom, Denise, and sister, Kayla. In the front row, Denise's hospital scrubs creased from sleepless nights, Kayla's small hand clutching her mom's, her stuffed rabbit tucked under her arm. Outside, the October rain had slowed to a drizzle, the storm's fury spent, leaving a quiet patter against the tall windows, a rhythm that matched Marcus's racing pulse. Leila Carter, his lawyer from the Ohio Innocence Project, stood beside him, her suit crisp, her braid tight, her files a fortress of truth that had carried them to this moment. The judge cleared her throat, her voice steady, deliberate, cutting through the room's tension like a blade. After careful review of the evidence, including newly disclosed footage, witness testimony, and documented prosecutorial misconduct, this court finds that Marcus Tate's conviction was fundamentally flawed. The conviction is vacated, and the state has declined to retry. Mr. Tate, you are free to go. The words hit like a thunderclap, the gallery erupting in gasps, cheers, and sobs. Denise's cry breaking through, raw and unrestrained, as Kayla leapt from her seat, her small arms reaching for Marcus. He stood, his legs unsteady, the weight of a year in prison lifting like a fog, the chains of his coerced confession, the viral video, the lies, all dissolving in the judge's ruling. Layla gripped his shoulder, her smile tired but triumphant, her eyes shining with the victory she'd fought for. The gallery surged, reporters typing furiously, ex-post streaming live, #Free Marcus Tate trending with tens of thousands of comment celebrations, demands for accountability, calls for Walsh and Pulaski's badges. Marcus stepped forward, his mom pulling him into a hug, her tears soaking his suit, her hospital smell clinging to her, a scent of home he'd missed in the bleach and concrete of prison. Kayla wrapped her arms around his waist, her voice small but fierce. "You're back, Marcus." He clutched her latest drawing, a crayon family under a bright sun, the colors vivid, no longer fading, and his throat tightened, the world too big, too bright after the gray of his cell. Outside, on the courthouse steps, the air smelled of wet, pavement and freedom, the drizzle cool against his skin, the sky a patchwork of gray and gold as the storm cleared. Supporters mobbed him, their signs held high, cameras flashing, Sam Rivera's voice cutting through, his camera rolling for the documentary he'd promised, his X-posts already spreading the news, likes climbing past 1 million. Denise stood beside him, her face worn but radiant, whispering, "We never stopped, baby. Never." Marcus nodded, his voice caught, his eyes scanning the crowd strangers who'd shared his story, donated to his legal fund, worn bracelets for his cause. Later, at a diner across town, not Jenna's, but close enough to feel familiar, the clink of coffee cups and the hum of a jukebox grounded him. The smell of greasy fries and syrup, a stark contrast to the prison slop. Lila sat across from him, her notebook open, detailing plans to sue the county for wrongful conviction, to push for reforms in Willow Creek's police department, her voice steady with purpose. Sam joined them, his laptop open, showing clips of his articles, each one a nail in the coffin of the system that had failed Marcus. They spoke of Jenna's family, their grief real, their loss untouched by Marcus's freedom, and Marcus felt the weight of it, a reminder that justice for him didn't erase their pain. He traced Kayla's drawing, his fingers lingering on the sun, and spoke, his voice soft but clear. "I lost a year, my name, my future, all because of a blurry video and a system that didn't care. But people out there, you saw me, believed me. If my story makes you think, makes you question what you see on X, what the police tell you, talk about it. Share it. Don't let another kid go through this." His words weren't a pitch, but a plea, born from nights sketching in the dark, from Denise's relentless posts, from Reggie's whispered wisdom, from Lila's dogged fight, from Sam's articles that turned strangers into allies. The diner's warmth wrapped around him, the jukebox playing a soft country tune, and Marcus looked out the window, the stars piercing the Ohio sky, clearer now, brighter. He thought of Jenna, of the real killer still out there, of the system that had almost buried him. Freedom was heavy, fragile, but it was his, and as he hugged Kayla again, her small hand in his, he vowed to carry it forward, to draw, to live, to make sure the truth wasn't buried again. Not for him, not for anyone.